teaching English abroad. And we'll save some questions. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, you can just put them in the question box, and then we will take questions at the end of the webinar. So let's get into it. All right, so today's agenda, we're going to be talking about resume essentials for teaching abroad. Then we'll go over some common mistakes and things to avoid. We're also going to be talking about other additional things that are just as important as a resume, like cover letters, photos, videos. And then we're going to be talking about the importance of TEFL and how to add it to your resume. And then just a brief overview of the types of jobs, opportunities for teaching English abroad specifically. And then we'll share some final thoughts and have some time for a Q&A. So let's get into some basic resume structure. Luke, do you want to introduce yourself too? And I can introduce myself as well.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Luke Beland. I'm the Associate Director for CIEE Teach Abroad and TEFL. Happy to be joining today for the resume workshop. I've been with CIEE for a little over 10 years. And before that, I was teaching English in the country of Jordan, city of Amman. So I've been in the international education space for a while and have done the teach abroad thing myself, although it was some time ago. Happy to be here today. And just as a quick check of the sound to make sure everything's working, if you can hear us, just say hi or yes in the Q&A tool, if you would, just so we can see if that's working. If you're in the audience, you're muted, so we can't hear you, but all right, I'm seeing some highs and some yeses in the Q&A tool. That's awesome. So yeah, like Rachel said, feel free to ask any questions as they occur to you, or if you've got questions now, you're welcome to ask them. You can just put them right in the Q&A tool. We might jump on a few of them as we go through the presentation, but some of them we'll save for discussion at the end as well. So thank you all for joining, and over to you, Rachel, to introduce yourself.
Yeah, so my name is Rachel Dietz. I'm a CIEE TEFL advisor. I started with the company back in March of 2022, and I'm a CIEE alumni myself. I did the CIEE Teach Abroad program in Madrid a few years ago. So very excited to be here with all of you and to talk a little bit more about kind of the resume structure and how to get into teaching English abroad, because it's an experience that I wouldn't change for the world. So very excited to share that with all of you. Great. I'll turn it over to Luke to get started.
Super. So we always get questions from people about how can I make my resume the best it can be for teaching English abroad. So what we're going to go over here is starting with some basic tips and then getting more specific. We're sort of presuming that people have made resumes before, and so this is more about how to tailor them and adapt them for use in this specific field. So starting with the basics, at the top, name, phone, and email. Those are pretty standard on resumes, but when you're planning to teach in a different country, we do recommend putting your country of citizenship as well. That's of course not usual for teaching abroad in your home, or for working in your home country, but it is relevant if someone's going to be hiring you, from across the border and sponsoring you for a visa, just to show, right off the bat that you're eligible for the citizenships or visa that they're able to sponsor. So that's a really good idea to include. Something we see a lot is a short summary or profile of the candidate, which we think is helpful. So we recommend it. If it doesn't line up well with how you want to proceed, you don't have to. It's not a requirement, but a lot of people like it as kind of a quick chance to introduce yourself, or highlight something, or say what you're passionate about, which is something that might not fit in other parts of the resume. Next would be education. So for any university degree that you hold, what is it? Where did you earn it? What's the name of the university? Where is it located? What your major was, and the date. If you've earned it in the past, you can put, the month and year that it was awarded. If you're still working on the degree or finishing it up, you can put the month and year you expect it to be awarded. If you've studied abroad, it's customary to put a second sort of smaller line for that. So like University of Charles V in Prague, summer 2023. So it's got the dates, it's got the location, and you could even say study abroad, just to sort of avoid any confusion about, wait, did you transfer to this university and then transfer back? No, it's a study abroad experience. But those are handy because they show that you have some international experience under your belt and not just as a tourist. And then the meat of the sandwich, so to speak, is the experience. And something it's just a reminder, for every role that you're listing here, just make sure to state the role that you had, the name of the organization, again, where it's located, city and state, or city and country, and then the start and end dates of the experience. That's something that stands out to me if I'm reviewing applications, and I'm looking at the experience section, and it's only sort of giving some of that information. It feels like a weaker resume in that case. If it's like, this person, forgot to include this stuff, or I have trouble understanding what they were doing or where they were doing it or when. So that's pretty basic stuff, but everybody makes mistakes or forgets things. So that's something to check on as well. Skills is another great section, particularly because if you're teaching English abroad, we know that one of your skills is going to be the English language, and that's something that the employers are going to be seeking. So you want to specify, native speaker of English, native speaker proficiency level of English. If you learned English later in life, put the level that you're at, B1, B2, C1, C2, etc. And it's best to sort of think of some other language, other strengths or competencies as well, especially if you don't have a second or third language that you're listing skills for, just so that the section kind of holds together. And for length, unless you are sort of later in your career and have a longer story to tell, 1 page is best. You want to flip to the next slide, Rachel? Thank you. Okay, so that's pretty basic. The advice I always give people when they ask is make sure that you're really highlighting experience that's relevant to the job you're applying for. Simple advice, very common sense. The devil's in the details. How do you do that? For a teaching abroad job, obviously classroom experience would be relevant, or language teaching experience would be relevant. Many people teach abroad without those types of experience already completed. So the advice that I give is don't discount other non-classroom experiences that are relevant, like tutoring, coaching, working in a summer camp. Some people do a lot of training at work. Some people may lead a Sunday school or religious class, or volunteering. And sometimes people, they don't think of that at first, but it's important to not discount those and to include them. The flip side of that is I have seen resumes for people applying to teach abroad where it's 2.5 pages of highly detailed sort of technical information about laboratory work, or going really in detail about sort of different roles and branches of military service. Certainly you should include enough to answer the question of where you were during that time and roughly what you were doing. But a school that's hiring someone to teach English just doesn't need that information, and it's going to be, distracting or at worst off-putting. So the flip side of the coin of really highlighting experience that's relevant and giving more detail about that is minimizing things that are less relevant. So the other tip I like to give is to think about whether chronological order is sort of your friend or your enemy. And let's say you worked in business for a few years and then shifted into teaching, and your last few jobs have been in teaching. That may be all you need, is just to sort of go in reverse chronological order and show, because the teaching experience will be at the top of your resume. But if it's the other way around, if you had some great relevant experience, but it was 2 or 3 jobs ago, you may want to break up your experience section into 2 sections so that you can kind of cherry pick and say, here's my relevant experience, and list everything that's relevant to teaching, and then say, here's my other experience. Maybe it's more recent, but it's not as relevant, so you're putting it lower down on the resume. I've also seen people use a category header of leadership and service, or internships. So that's going to be pretty personal for your own sort of career path. But don't be afraid to step away from a strict chronology in order to highlight relevant experience. Next slide.
Great. I think, Luke, if you don't mind, I think someone
Sure.
asked a really good question that's particularly relevant to this slide. They said on the resume tips on the CIEE application, it says to not include native language, which in my case is English, and says that longer resumes, longer than 1 page, are common overseas. Do you disagree, or is this advice solely for the application process?
I think those 2 questions, they're not make or break. If your resume shows that you live in the U.S., that you're a U.S. citizen, that you went to university in the U.S., it's reasonable to assume that that you speak English with the proficiency of a native speaker. It can never hurt to explicitly state that, particularly if you maybe lived in multiple countries or went to a university, let's say in Puerto Rico or Quebec, where Spanish or French is used, or another country where English is one of several languages. Then it becomes even more important to specify your story with the English language. And the same thing with 1 or 2 pages. If you're graduating in 3 months, there's no need to work extra hard just to make your resume go to 1.5 pages, when 1 page would accomplish the mission. So there's no need to pad it. But on the other hand, if you have had a bunch of roles and there's a lot of detail you want to include, don't kick yourself trying to compress it down into 1 page. I think 1 to 2 pages is what you're looking for. And as it starts to come together, you'll start to feel which one's more appropriate for your situation. Either one's okay.
Perfect. Okay. Moving on to the next slide.
Ooh, I see another question, which we'll take that one live. If someone has dual citizenship, should they list both countries? Or if they speak more than 2 languages, is it necessary to list them all? I would say dual citizenship is mostly important if you have 2 passports. If I'm a dual citizen of, let's say, the US and Germany, and I'm applying for jobs in Spain, Germany's an EU country, which means if I had a German passport, my visa situation would be different and probably advantageous. But if I don't have a German passport, it sort of doesn't change anything. I'd be coming in as an American with an American passport. So I think the same goes with languages you speak and citizenships that you hold. You can include them if you want to, if you think it would be helpful to show that you have multiple passports, or that you have proficiency in a bunch of languages. Certainly include that. If you feel like it's not relevant or it's not really helping or adding anything, there's no obligation to say those things if you don't want to. Okay, so to sort of close out actually we've got a couple more slides on the resume, but keep it concise. Some famous writers have come up with the advice of omit needless words, which is the shortest possible way to say it. And again, 2 pages is fine if that's a better fit with your story. A lot of people that we see at CIEE Teach Abroad are recent grads, in which case 1 page is fine. and just keep it professional, keep it well proofread, I suppose. Check it yourself, make sure it's easy to read and follow. Double check grammar and spelling, and really important, have someone else double check grammar and spelling too, not just you, and not just spell check. And a couple things not to do. Don't use a template that's super generic. You want to, you could start with one certainly, but just make sure that it's a good fit with what you have. Don't include too much detail. It's not relevant. If you submit a resume that at the top says, my objective is to get a job with a consulting firm, or that's got a lot of detail about non-relevant types of work, that sends a message that you're not trying very hard. So, do take the time to tailor your resume to teaching abroad specifically. And yeah, repeating the advice, you can't say it too many times. Proofread and check for errors. It's your first impression, so it's quite important. And don't go too far overboard on too much fancy font and bold and italics and underlining. Use a bit of that for emphasis or clarity, but don't go overboard with it. All right, so I'm also going to talk a bit about other things that often go with resumes when you're applying to teaching jobs. Again, these may or may not apply to all situations, but cover letters are common. So do explain yourself and introduce yourself in your own words and talk about your motivation. Don't focus too much on, I love traveling, I want to do all kinds of trips in the region while I'm there. Schools, it may be very true, but schools abroad, if anything, they might see that as someone who's a little less focused on working with the students or taking the job seriously. So it's fine if that is true, but that's sort of not the note you want to be sounding in a cover letter or in an interview for that matter. It's also okay to be applying for teaching jobs if you don't have a lot of experience. You don't have to come out and say that in your cover letter. And if you do, you better be following it up with a really good sort of explanation of why you're still a great fit and how you're ready to really learn and adapt. But we definitely see people say that in their cover letters sometimes for CIEE Teach Abroad, maybe forgetting that there's multiple audiences. It's not just us who's going to see it. It's going to be the schools that are making hiring decisions. So that's just something to be cautious of. If you can, in a cover letter especially, that's a great chance to show that you're looking specifically at a particular job or employer. You could pull something from the job description like age group, pull something from their website about maybe a teaching philosophy, or the team that they're describing. And that sends a message that you're pretty strongly interested, which is always a good thing. It's 2025, so AI exists. If you want to use it, start with your own words. Don't let AI sort of start from scratch for you. It's a useful tool for sort of refining, improving, making it clearer, making it shorter. But make sure to read it again after you're done. And if it sounds too fake, if it sounds too flowery, if it's inauthentic, don't use it. It's a tool. It's not a replacement for your own words. And we said it before, and we'll probably say it again, but proofread and double check cover letters too. Have somebody else read it before you submit it. And finally, photos and videos. This is something that we see for all of our teaching programs in Asia. Is a lot less common elsewhere. So I want to say that clearly, that this isn't something that everybody needs. I think that it's more customary if you're going to be teaching in South Korea or teaching in China, maybe Japan or Thailand. Employers may like or may even expect or require to have one or more photos of you with the resume. You can put this right in the resume if you want to at the top. If that feels like a comfortable way to introduce yourself, you can. Or it may be sort of part of a list of materials that you're asked to submit. And sometimes this happens later on in the hiring process where employers or someone you're working with might ask for a video introduction, like a 2-minute video of yourself, sort of like a video cover letter. That, especially in Asia, that can be really useful because it can help your resume stand out from the pile. It lets a school sort of take a moment to get to know you better without taking any risk or going through the hassle and time of scheduling a video interview across, a big time zone difference. So for both pictures and videos, you want to make sure that you're presenting well and sort of dressing like you would for an in-person interview. It's a real chance to show enthusiasm. Smile. Enthusiasm is key. Every school that's hiring teachers wants enthusiastic people. And the number one best, easiest thing you can do to make a good impression and feel enthusiastic, whether it's a video or an interview, is to smile, or the photos you're submitting. So keep that in mind while you're interviewing, or any kind of visual presentation. If you're submitting a couple of photos to a potential employer, the advice we've learned over the years is avoid graduation photos because they highlight, that you're sort of a fresh entry to the job market, and employers sometimes kind of come away from that thinking about inexperience. Alcohol and swimsuit photos, kind of common sense not to use those. We do advise people not to use photos of themselves with other people, or if you're one of sort of 5 people in the shot, it may be hard for the employer to tell which one's you, or it's less useful to them compared to a solo shot or a shot where you're clearly the most prominent person. And with cover letters and with video introductions, it's always good to close by thanking them for their consideration and their time.
Excellent.
I'm going to pass the mic to Rachel, who's going to take us through a couple more resume considerations and then look at how TEFL fits into this picture.
Yeah. So now that Luke has talked about some of the resume basics and some tips and tricks for constructing your resume, this picture over here of Danny Martinez is kind of an example resume. So my question for you all, and you can type this in the chat, would be, what did Danny do well with on his resume? What are some things that, that he really knocked it out of the park, if he were to be applying to teach English abroad? Give you some time to think. He's a nice camp counselor. He has a bachelor's from the University of Michigan. Anything stick out to you all? His photo as the opener looks very professional. Absolutely. Nice headshot. Just of him.
Good use of portrait mode.
The blurred background, yeah. His experience is relevant. Yes. Excellent.
I like the about me and the sort of headline Danny chose. Aspiring English teacher, says that Danny's tailored this specifically for a teaching resume. It's not a generic resume. And I like how he's desiring to contribute to a vibrant learning community, passionate about intercultural pieces. It's not sort of, I want to see the world and cross countries off my bucket list. Those are sort of sound bites that are going to land well with a school that's trying to hire a teacher.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, then the next question is, what are some things that Danny should change about his resume to make it more optimal for applying to teach abroad? Anything stand out there? The template? Okay. Yeah, he could reformat the template so that maybe the text is a little bit bigger. Of course, this is a Canva template, so he could have done it in Word to make it look maybe more professional, although I'm a big fan of Canva. I think it makes things a lot easier. The graphic design experience is not as relevant. Yes. Yeah, that would be I think one that Luke touched on. Maybe there is some aspects of that web designer job that are more relevant to teaching that he can highlight instead of more technical aspects like the tools that he used.
Someone said country of citizenship. I noticed that too. If I'm an employer, that is potentially an open question that hasn't been definitively answered yet. So that's something Danny could add.
Yeah. And he could make his contact info a little higher in the resume because it's not easy to see. Yeah, maybe like underneath his name, and including the email, I think is good too. Oh, good question. Should you put an email on these as well? Yeah. Definitely.
I bet you cropped this, Rachel, to help it fit on this slide. I bet it looks a little better at Canva before you got started
Yes,
in
but it
terms of
works.
the
It works
format, the template.
perfect. It
Yeah,
works
yeah.
perfect to have people think about what else might be missing from the resume. I think also the skills to me could be a little bit more directed towards teaching English, like skills that you would need as a teacher, like leadership skills, organizational skills, things like that. Friendly, I think is something that is a little bit fluffy. Although that's a great skill and very important if you're a teacher, maybe not something that's super necessary to have on the resume. Okay, great. Well, we'll move on to the next slide. I think someone had asked in the question box, if CIEE is the same thing as TEFL. And so I think I'll just take it back a little bit before I go into the explanation about TEFL and how that kind of works into all of this to explain if you're new to CIEE and you haven't heard about us a ton. We are an international education company. We're based out of Portland, Maine. There's a lot of different departments that serve folks that are getting into international education all the way from high school programs through college study abroad programs, but CIEE, Teach Abroad, and TEFL are specifically dedicated for people who are wanting to teach English abroad through our Teach Abroad programs, and then also get TEFL certified through our accredited TEFL courses. So yes, CIEE and CIEE TEFL are the same thing. We all work under the same company, and we all work under the same mission. And CIEE Teach and TEFL work very closely together. So I think the first question always is why TEFL? A TEFL certificate certifies you to teach English as a foreign language, but not all places are going to require it. It's really important, to consider getting TEFL certified if you don't have any teaching experience. Of course, a TEFL certificate is going to walk you through the basics of being a teacher and help you to create some habits to be an effective teacher in the classroom, especially in an international setting. Maybe you don't have work experience outside of the US. A big part of the TEFL course is going over cultural competency and being effective, again, in an international setting. The TEFL certificate is an investment in your career. It's a professional development that is recognized worldwide. So it's something that you can use with CIEE related programs, or you can use it throughout the entirety of your career with non-CIEE related programs as well. And then the best thing about TEFL certificate is that you never have to renew. It's always, it never expires, right? So it's something that is going to stay with you throughout your life. A little quote there from one of our recent TEFL alumni. She said, I think that anyone who will be teaching English to students that do not speak English needs to complete this course. A degree in education won't cover things, at least not as much in detail, that this course dives into. So good words of wisdom there. In terms of your options, first for TEFL through CIEE, if you're wanting to teach abroad and you're wanting to add something to your resume, these are kind of the two best recommendations for teaching abroad. Number one recommendation being the 150-hour TEFL course, because it does meet kind of that basic international recommendation. International employers right now are looking for at least 120 hours or more. So our 150-hour TEFL certificate meets that baseline requirement. The course is 11 weeks long. I always say it's kind of best of both worlds. It is an online course, but you get a lot of interaction with your peers that are also taking the course with you, as well as a live TEFL instructor that's getting you feedback throughout the entirety of the course. You also get hands-on experience through the 20-hour practicum that's required through the course. So you get to practice what teaching in a classroom feels like and will look like for you. So you get that experience before you have to jump into that international classroom. And again, it's meeting international qualifications. We are an accredited institution, so this can be used anywhere worldwide. Another little note here too is that CIEE TEFL is offering some discounts for the months of February and March. So if you're interested, please let us know. You can write an email to us. I'll put that in the chat literally later on in the presentation. But happy to help you guys get enrolled in the course if you're interested. Second option is the 60-hour TEFL certificate. This is more of an introductory level TEFL course. So this is like for people who are thinking, I'm not quite sure if I'm need a TEFL certificate or if I am, thinking that I really want to teach abroad, right? This is kind of to get your feet wet, to see what it's all about, what you would be doing when you're teaching abroad. It's completely self-paced. You can enroll at any time. And again, you get feedback from a TEFL instructor, just like you would in the 150-hour course. And it's a good way just to see what it's all about. So those are your two options there. And then how to incorporate TEFL on your resume. Of course, if you have not a ton of experience in teaching, that's totally okay. A TEFL certificate is going to really help boost your resume in that regard. So a place where you can incorporate your TEFL experience would be in the skills portion. So you can talk about the different skills that you learned in the course, like lesson planning, classroom management, things like that, cultural competency, mastery of the English language. There is quite a bit of section on the basics of English, because a lot of times as native speakers, we might forget some of the things that our students who are not native speakers might ask us. So really important to have that foundation and to include that in your skills. Another place to include the TEFL course on your resume would be in the education section. I think Danny Martinez had his C1 certificate of Spanish on his education portion, but you could also include your TEFL certificate as valid education and professional development in that section. So this is a mock here of how you could add that in, including the dates of when you got certified. A lot of folks ask when they're getting enrolled or they're thinking about enrolling in a TEFL course, if they can put it on their resume already. Yes, you can definitely put the resume or the TEFL course on your resume. Just say that you are anticipating to finish by X date. Again, the TEFL course, at least through CIEE, has specific start and end dates. So you can always ask about when the end date officially will be, and when it's estimated that you'll have your TEFL certificate in hand, and get that on your resume to demonstrate to employers that you're investing time into getting TEFL certified. All right, and finally, getting into some of the types of job opportunities. When you get TEFL certified and you're thinking about, okay, what are the ways that I can now start looking and applying for jobs? You have your resume ready, you have your TEFL certificate. One thing that you can do is start looking for jobs independently. You can start with a simple Google search, or you can go to the CIEE TEFL website. We have a ton of what we call our ultimate guides, where it breaks down kind of what it is, what teaching abroad is about in various different countries. And they have resources of job boards that you can get connected with to start looking for jobs independently. You could work with an ESL recruiter. So you can get in touch, give them their information, your information, and have them kind of work on your behalf. And then the last thing is to apply to teach abroad program. There's kind of two ways to go about that. I think the first way is through government programs specifically. So lots of governments will have programs specifically for helping hire English teachers to help their students in their countries learn English. So that's a way. Spain has a program. France has a program. I believe Chile at one time had a program. So lots of options there. And then there's also program providers. So CIEE Teach Abroad would be considered a program provider. We help to put you in touch and to help you through the pre-departure process of successfully getting you from where you are in your home country to teaching abroad in various different places. So another advantage of program providers is that you can reach out to us. We love to answer questions and help you get started. So feel free to let us know if you have any questions about that. And that's why we're hosting the webinar today, right? To help spread some awareness and some information about applying to teach abroad. All right. Getting into some final thoughts here. Luke, will you take it away on final thoughts for today's webinar?
So I'm gonna wrap up in a few. If you have any questions, feel free to send those our way. Final thoughts. Get started early. Things like getting hired and getting through the visa process, lining up with different deadlines and seasons in different countries. It's very easy for it to take longer than you think. So if this is something you're interested in, start working on your resume now. Start reaching out to programs or the TEFL team here or potential employers sooner rather than later. It's okay if you sort of know exactly what you want to do. It can never hurt to get in touch and start talking about it. So if you're not ready to sort of build a full plan yet, you can just start communicating with people or teams that are in the sector. And most programs and the TEFL team here, we'd be happy to chat and share advice and answer questions. Employers, maybe not. You can overdo it with sort of early stage questions, trying to understand what it's going to be like. They may prefer to just look at a resume and then have conversations like that more in the interview. But another thing you should do ahead of time, if you can, is get TEFL certified. If you don't have classroom experience, if you don't already feel like you've got the experience or training you need to teach English, if you're not quite ready to step into the classroom, getting a TEFL certificate and signing up for some TEFL training is a great first step. That's going to help you be appealing to employers. It's going to help you feel more confident as you're talking to them in interviews and on your first day and beyond in the classroom once you do start teaching. It takes time, so that's something why we want to put that near the top of the sort of timeline, near the top of the agenda, is to start looking into TEFL course options and pick one and get started. Communication, of course, flows through all of this, but we have kind of an unofficial motto. It works well with the visa, things like a visa process, but it works great for a job search. It's to be proactive, be persistent, be patient, be polite. Things might be slower than you like. Things might take a couple of tries. Things aren't going to happen by themselves. So throughout all of this, I think it's good to sort of be mentally ready for things to be a bit of a slow or windy road. There's going to be ambiguity. There's going to be questions that don't necessarily have clear or concrete answers. So just keeping those things in mind as you start the process will help make it a lot less stressful as you're going through it with TEFL certification and understanding your options for teaching abroad eventually going and starting to do it. And one other final thought I will share, Rachel, if you'll flip the slide. Rachel was explaining how teach abroad program providers like CIE's teach abroad options is one way to go. We just found out about this week, but we, based on independent reviews on the third-party website called Go Overseas, we're honored to be recognized as the best teach abroad overall provider of 2024, based on the reviews of people who did our programs and other similar programs. So we obviously strive for really high quality, and we're humbled and gratified and proud all at the same time to see that recognized through this recent award.
Yes, very exciting news for us. We appreciate all the reviews. And if you want to read the reviews, you can go to the Go Overseas website.
And we can grab a link and put that in the chat as well.
Yeah. Great.
Awesome.
Good. I think we have some questions. First question I see in the box is the TEFL course a full-time course, or could it be done alongside college courses work? So the TEFL course is technically part-time. Again, it's 11 weeks long, and students estimate needing about 12 to 15 hours a week to complete activities. We do follow a weekly schedule, so there are weekly deadlines, so you have to keep up with the pace of the course, but there's not really any specific day or time that you need to be connected. It's pretty independent in that regard. So yes, you can be doing, I mean, we have a lot of people that are full-time employees or also full-time students that are also taking our TEFL course. So yes, definitely be done. I think it takes a little bit of time management, because it is a rigorous course, but definitely possible. Let's see. This person already has a TEFL. Ready to go to Vietnam, been seeking a job, no luck. Do you think it's a resume problem? I've experienced teaching and was an assistant teacher back in South Africa for almost 2 years. Any advice, Luke?
That sounds like a tough situation, and I'm sorry that it's been a tough job search. Hard to say without knowing more about it. If you've been trying for several months without luck, that's a signal that it might be a good idea to maybe like widen the job search to different types of schools. For example, public schools or private schools, international schools that serve like an English speaking curriculum, or local schools that serve a curriculum in the local language. Yeah, I think it's probably a signal to change the approach a bit. If you've already been TEFL certified and got a visa for Vietnam and been trying, I imagine you've been polishing the resume a lot, so that's probably not the one thing that needs to change, but it can never hurt to look it over again.
Yeah, I would definitely second that. Like widening the search a little bit, continuing, and I think again, Luke's said in the final thoughts there, to be persistent. I think that's really important too, to continue to reach out to institutions, maybe take a second look over your resume, see if there's anything that can be tweaked or updated, and keep going for it.
Or record a video introduction. That could be something to try as well. A quick sort of 2-minute video version of your cover letter, polished and professional, and you can save it as an unlisted video on YouTube, which means you can only find it if you directly send the link to someone. And you could include that in an email along with your resume and cover letter, and say, here's a short video I put together to introduce myself. That's a tip that we use if we find that someone's struggling with a job search and having trouble getting traction. So that could be something to try.
Okay. Next question is, how do I know if I would like or enjoy teaching English and teaching in general? Is it something that it is something that I'm interested in, but I'm not sure if I would be good at it. I think that would be like the perfect case to consider like a 60-hour TEFL course. Because it's going to give you like a looking glass into what teaching in the classroom is going to be like, what things that you're going to need to be good at, and if you like that. Another thing that's cool about our 60-hour course is that if you decide to go all in TEFL, like you get halfway through the 60-hour course and you're like, yeah, this is what I want to do. You can always transfer to our 150-hour course. And your monetary investment to the 60-hour course can go towards the 150-hour course. So 60-hour course is a really great way to kind of get your feet wet and see if it's for you. You know, and kind of get into the heat of it, right? And really start to learn about what TEFL is all about. I think another thing too that I would recommend is just starting with some research. One really good resource that's actually on the screen right now is the CIEE Teach social media accounts. Really great way. We as staff members post very little, but our teachers post a lot. So all of the posts that we have for the most part come from our current teachers who are on our CIEE Teach Abroad programs. And so it's really good to just kind of listen into what their teaching experience is all about. And you can actually connect with them personally. A lot of times they tag themselves in their posts on our page. And so you can get in contact with them directly and ask them kind of what their experience is about, if they would recommend it, and kind of share a little bit about yourself as well. They're very generous people in sharing their experience. So highly, highly recommend. We're on Instagram and TikTok. If you want to get connected with us there. Is it guaranteed that we will get placed in a school if I'm applying for Madrid program? I'll let Luke answer that one.
Sure. So each of our Teach Abroad programs is sort of set up in a unique way. With the Madrid program, it's a very large and consistent and well-established program, and it's truly entry level. So our Teach in Madrid opportunity is part-time teaching assistant, which means there's actually no video interview at all. It's selection based on the application and cover letter and a letter of recommendation. And I'll say we have a high acceptance rate with that. And once someone is fully signed up and committed to the program, we do offer a guarantee of placement with the Madrid government. They essentially have a big list of school placements they need. We come with a big list of teaching assistants who've signed up. And of course, we're coordinating throughout the whole year to understand the capacity and size of that program. So once you're in, you're in.
Great. If you applied to do CIEE and TEFL, how would the schedule look like with the courses? So you can apply for both at the same time. You don't have to wait to get TEFL certified to then apply to Teach Abroad, and you don't have to wait to Teach Abroad to then apply to get TEFL certified. You know, they're not mutually exclusive. So how it would look with courses, we have courses that start every 2 weeks year round. So you really get to choose when you want to start your TEFL course. That said, I would recommend getting certified sooner than later, especially if you are wanting to be teaching abroad within 6 to 12 months, because there are a lot of advantages of getting certified well before you actually depart to teach abroad. A good example of that is that, for example, for our Teach Abroad program in Thailand, if you get certified well before you leave for Thailand, you would qualify for a pay increase. So you can actually make more money per month if you are TEFL certified with the 150-hour course. So again, very advantageous to get that started as soon as you're able to be able to cash in on some of those advantages of being TEFL certified for teaching abroad. I think, sorry, I forgot to add the Teach Abroad program. I'm not quite sure what that question means. If you want to type in, you know, a clarification on that question, we'd love to answer what you mean by that. see, how long and how much does it take to complete the 100? Okay, so it says 420-hour course. CIE doesn't offer a 420-hour course. Every program or every course provider is going to be different. Not all TEFL courses are created equal. So if there's a provider that's offering a 420-hour course, I think it's really important to look into reviews and reach out to the provider themselves to see exactly how long that's going to take you to complete that. Again, the CIE TEFL course is 150 hours. It's going to take you 11 weeks to complete. You cannot complete it in any time shorter than that. And like I said before, we are an accredited course. Accreditation basically is quality control for TEFL courses. Super, super important to make sure that whatever TEFL course that you choose is accredited, because that means that you're going to have global recognition, right? The CIE TEFL course is actually recognized by the U.S. Department of Education. We're listed on their website, and that holds a lot of weight in the international community. So that's why we're able to say that we're internationally recognized. So important to get in touch with the provider, look around, see if there's any reviews. If there's not any reviews, you can't get in touch with the provider, maybe not the best choice to go with that particular provider if there's no one that can, kind of answer your questions about that. Oh, okay, it went with the question above. I think we answered that then. Perfect. If you have from another accredited program. Okay, this is a good question. Okay, so if you have a TEFL certificate from another accredited program, does that certificate also work for CIE Teach? I would say probably yes. Maybe Luke has a little bit more details on exactly how that works if you have a TEFL from a different provider, and how that works to verify that with CIE Teach Abroad programs.
Yeah, I think the rule of thumb we use on that is the bare minimum outside TEFL course we can accept for our Teach Abroad programs where TEFL is a requirement would be 120 hours with an accredited course. And in most cases, we do we offer that like for our let's see, I'm thinking about China and South Korea where there's a pretty strong TEFL requirement. And typically if somebody's going to opt out of the CIEE TEFL course that's included with those programs, we would want to see a completed TEFL certificate from outside. Just because that way we know it's definitely going to be completed and awarded. But yeah, if you've got specific questions about sort of a specific program and a specific TEFL certificate, you'd be welcome to email us the details and we can advise you about that.
Great. Next question is, how long is the application process once you've submitted your application? So for TEFL, if you submit an application for the TEFL course, the turnaround time for us to review your application is pretty fast. As long as it's not on the weekend, you can probably guarantee a reply in about 24 hours. And we usually send an email, a letter of acceptance, and then we ask you to select your TEFL course start date in that email. So that would be when you kind of get to schedule your course, or you can ask questions about when it would be best for you to schedule your TEFL course to start. What about the Teach Abroad applications, Luke?
Depends how far in advance you're applying. If you submitted an application today for a January 2026 teaching opportunity, you would probably not be hearing from us for several months, unless you wrote to us and asked for expedited review for some reason. Once we're sort of into the recruitment cycle for a particular program, 5, 6, 7 months before departure, we're trying to get to all applications within 1 to 2 weeks of when they're completed.
Great. All right, I'll give a little bit more time to ask questions. We do have one more slide just to clarify like what the next steps are if you're wanting to move forward. So the first step would be to choose where you want to go. Super important to really be thinking about, you know, where you want to go and what program is going to be best for you. We recommend applying for one program at a time or one job at a time. So you really need to narrow down your options before you start an application. There's many reasons why we recommend that we only do one program at a time, but essentially this just streamlines the process for you and makes the application process a lot easier. Number two would be to get TEFL certified, of course. We recommend getting TEFL certified, like I mentioned before, well before you depart for teaching abroad. Again, we are offering discounts on our 150 and 180-hour courses that start in February and March. Of course, we have courses that start after that as well, but there are some pretty significant discounts. So if you have any questions about that, I'll put that in the TEFL email in the chat if you're interested in getting started. Pretty simple email, tefl@ciee.org. And then the last step is to make sure to apply before the deadline. So deadlines, especially for CIEE programs, are usually set so that you can stay on track in the pre-departure process. If you can, apply as soon as possible to get a head start. I always say rule of thumb is you want to, from the time that you decide to teach abroad to the time that you're actually teaching abroad, usually takes anywhere from 6 to 12 months. So you want to plan accordingly. Like if you want to be abroad this fall 2025, applications are open now for the majority of our teach abroad programs and placements. So the time is now to get started if you're wanting to teach abroad this fall. And in most cases, the time is now if you want to teach abroad in spring 2026. So it's never a bad idea to get rolling on things if you're interested. Okay. Great. Any last minute questions? Any last minute thoughts, Luke?
I'll just say thank you for everyone for joining and taking your time to be with us today and sending us these questions. They're really great. Yeah, we hope to be in touch with you soon.
Excellent. All right, we'll be signing off, but thank you. Ooh, maybe I have one more question here. Yeah, no problem. Thanks for coming to the webinar. We really appreciate your support and your attendance today. We'll be sending the recording a little bit later this week, but yeah, thanks for coming, and I'm sure we'll see you guys around soon. All right, bye guys.
Bye, everyone.